Okay, so picture this. You're scrolling through your newsfeed and you see another one of those stories,
Yeah.
about some big tech company gobbling up a smaller competitor.
Right, right.
Or maybe you're like me and you just spent way too long
Sure.
trying to decide which streaming service to sign up for this month.
Oh, I feel that.
Hmm.
It's like a battlefield out there.
It really is. It's like a jungle sometimes.
Totally.
And it gets you thinking, right, about this whole idea of survival of the fittest.
Absolutely.
But we're not just talking about, like, lions and gazelles here.
Right.
We're diving into how this idea plays out in society, in the realm of ideas.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where are we headed with this?
Back to the 19th century, actually, to
Right.
the work of a thinker named Herbert Spencer. Ever heard of him?
The name rings a bell, yeah, but to be honest, I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you much beyond that.
Well, get ready,
Yeah.
because Spencer took Darwin's theory of evolution
Mm,
and applied it to, well, us, to human society.
interesting. So not just observing finches. Exactly.
He was applying those observations to people.
That's exactly what he was doing.
Wow. That seems like a bit of a leap.
It's a big leap,
Eh.
and one that had a huge impact. In fact, Spencer is the one who actually coined the phrase survival of the fittest.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I always thought that was Darwin himself.
Nope, that was all Spencer. And he believed that just like in nature, the strongest,
Mm-hmm.
the most adaptable, those are the ones who rise to the top.
So are we talking about, like, physical strength here? Or is it something more than that?
It's more than just muscles, that's for sure.
Okay.
It's about being adaptable, being ingenious, figuring out how to thrive, even when the world around you is changing like crazy.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, you look at the business world,
Right.
or even just, like, technological innovation. The ones who can adapt, those are the ones who survive.
Exactly. And Spencer argued that this constant competition, it's not a bad thing. It's actually essential for progress. It drives innovation,
Okay.
and it weeds out alertness. Okay, I think I'm starting to see where this is going. So, if society's like this competitive arena,
Mm-hmm.
what did Spencer think about things like, government assistance,
Yeah.
giving people a helping hand?
Well, that is where things get really interesting. Spencer was completely, and I mean completely, against any kind of government intervention.
Wow. Really? So no safety net, no social programs, nothing.
He believed it interfered with what he called the natural order of things, that it would actually hold society back in the long run.
Hold on. So he thought helping the less fortunate would actually hurt society as a whole. How did he justify that?
He saw society kind of like a living organism, like a human body.
Okay. Interesting analogy.
And just like you wouldn't want to mess with the way your body works, he argued the government should basically keep its hands off the social body.
So any attempt to, regulate the economy, provide social welfare,
Anything like that.
he saw that as tampering with this delicate system.
Exactly. Tampering that would ultimately make society weaker, not stronger.
Wow. Okay, so in Spencer's world, it's all about individual responsibility, sink or swim, and somehow that leads to a better society overall.
That was his core belief, and he believed it so strongly that he even opposed things we might consider fundamental today.
Like what?
Public education, for example.
Wow, really?
He argued it artificially propped up the unfit, preventing the truly talented from reaching their full potential.
When you put it that way, it does make you think about the other side of this coin. Were there people who pushed back against this even back then?
Oh, absolutely. Even during Spencer's time, there were powerful voices pointing out the problems with this whole survival of the fittest idea applied to society.
Okay, so who are these critics? Give me some names.
Thinkers like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, for starters, they saw what Spencer was calling social Darwinism as just a fancy way to justify the brutal inequalities of the Industrial Revolution.
That makes sense.
They argued it wasn't about individual fitness at all, but about a system, capitalism, that seemed designed to create winners and losers right from the start.
Okay, so on the one hand,
Yeah.
you've got Spencer saying, let the strong thrive, competition is key. And on the other side, you've got Marx and Engels essentially saying, hold on a minute, the game is rigged.
Exactly. It was a total clash of ideologies, right? I mean, talk about a difference of opinion.
It really was a fundamental disagreement about how societies work,
Hey.
and what role, if any, the government should play.
So unpack that a bit more for us. What was Marx's perspective on all of this?
Well, Marx believed that capitalism, this system that Spencer was basically defending Marx, thought it was inherently exploitative.
Exploitative, what do you mean by that?
He saw it as a system where You have this small group of wealthy people at the top,
Okay.
and they're profiting off the labor of, well, everyone else, the workers, the masses.
And he saw Spencer's ideas as a way to justify that, to make it okay.
Exactly. Like it was just the natural order of things. And
Right.
some people are at the top and some are at the bottom.
Right, instead of it being a result of, how the system itself was structured.
Exactly. And that's what made their debate so important, I think.
Because it's like two completely different ways of looking at the world, right?
Totally. On the one hand, you've got Spencer with this emphasis on individual striving, pulling yourself up by your
Right,
bootstraps.
individual responsibility and all that.
And then on the other side, you have Marx who's saying, hold on a second, we need to look at the collective. We need to look at these systems and structures that are in place.
And both of these perspectives, I mean, they still resonate today, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even today,
Yeah.
we're still grappling with these same fundamental questions. Think about all the conversations happening right now about like universal basic income,
Hmm.
right? Or access to healthcare, or the role of government regulation in the economy.
It's like these old debates are still shaping the conversations we're having right now.
They really are. And that's why I think it's so important to understand this history, you know,
Mm.
because it helps us make sense of these debates, to engage with them in a more informed way, I think.
So give us an example. How does knowing about Spencer and Marx help us understand something like, say, income inequality today?
Well, if we only look at income inequality through the lens of, say, individual success or failure, like some people are just better equipped to get ahead.
Right, the Spencerian view.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We miss a huge part of the picture.
Yeah.
We need to consider those systemic factors, you know, the historical legacies of inequality, the ways that policies have either exacerbated or mitigated these disparities over time.
So it's like Spencer gives us one piece of the puzzle, and Marx and Engels give us other pieces,
Right.
and we kind of need all of them to see the whole picture.
100%. And that's why considering multiple perspectives is so important.
Okay, so we've talked about Spencer's ideas, we've talked about the criticisms, and we've touched on how those ideas are still relevant today. But I'm curious, what do you think Spencer himself would make of the world today?
Ooh, that is a fascinating question. It's impossible to know for sure, but
Yeah,
if we could put him in a time machine, bring him to the 21st century,
right.
I think he'd be fascinated,
Yeah.
but honestly, probably a bit horrified by what he saw.
It really does make you think, about how some of these ideas from the past, they're still playing out all around us.
It's like this echo chamber, right?
Totally. So, for our listeners, for everyone who's now thoroughly engrossed in the world of Herbert Spencer,
Hmm.
what's that one big takeaway you'd want them to remember?
We've been talking about Spencer and his belief in competition.
Right, survival of the fittest, all that.
Exactly.
Mm.
But it makes you wonder, what happens when that drive to compete, when that becomes the main thing, when it starts to overshadow everything else?
What do you mean?
Well, like what about our sense of shared responsibility? Looking out for each other, working together.
Right, right. Is it even possible to have both? To have that individual drive and still, care for the well-being of society as a whole?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's one that I don't think Spencer fully answered. Maybe it's not about survival of the fittest anymore. Maybe it's more about figuring out how to thrive together.
Thriving together. I like that. It's a good note to end on, don't you think?
Definitely.
Well, on that note, we'll leave our listeners with that food for thought. A huge thank you to all of you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Herbert Spencer and survival of the fittest. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.